Oh, you seeing a red light? Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Welcome everyone to today's October 23rd community meeting. And Rich is going to take it away with some big news.
Am I? Okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna lead up to it a bit. So there's a possibility that I will just begin talking, and nobody will stop me. So before I do that, I want to talk about some other technical milestones that MakerDAO has hit in the last week. Some of them are quite interesting. One of the things that I'm excited about. Whoa, look at this! What a crowd! One of the things I'm excited about is MakerDAO has joined a group called DeFi. It's decentralized finance. It's a group of the largest sort of stakeholders in the decentralized or the open finance space. So Dharma, Set, Didict. There's a huge crowd of people in there, and we're all sort of. It's the first time that this vertical of crypto organizations have got together for some planning, and it's very exciting. And it's an opportunity for us to talk to people that have the same challenges that we have and the same goals that we have. And it's an opportunity also for us to organize some public events. And one of those events happened in East San Francisco, where we had a lot of really interesting chats. Nick was there, and maybe he can jump in later and tell us or point out how valuable that was to the organization and to people in general. We'll be doing the same thing again in Prague. We'll be publishing a schedule of the interesting breakout sessions and talks that we'll be involved in. I know that there's 3 separate tracks right now, and some of the topics are quite interesting. Jess, do you have, I suppose you have that handy right now, do you? Sorry, you're muted. Still?
Yeah. So I do have the agenda handy. And MakerDAO is going to be presenting on the challenges of asset-backed stablecoins, as well as giving a closing sort of fireside panel as to decentralized finance in emerging markets. So we're going to have our very own Mariano DP within the DeFi and emerging markets, as well as Rune and Rune and Nick in terms of challenges of asset-backed stablecoins. We might be doing more as well. Maybe an ad hoc talk on keepers and incentives somewhere. So a lot to look forward to. And if anyone has recommendations of content they'd like to see, I'd love for you to let me know.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things happening there. A lot of heavyweights will be in attendance. There's 3 different tracks. There's some talks there that I absolutely do not want to miss. Check out our Twitter feed. And we've already posted, but we'll be posting again, sign up information for the DeFi events. So if you want to go, sign up now, because spots are going to fill up soon. Second really interesting announcement that happened in the last week was POA Networks officially released their parallel chain that supports Dai natively, which is, it kind of had minimal fanfare at the beginning, but it's picking up a lot of interesting steam as people begin to understand what that actually means. And what that actually means is that we have access to a super fast parallel chain or a side chain that supports Dai natively, which means that you transact Dai and you pay your transaction fees in Dai, and those transaction fees are very, very small. So the transaction fee, instead of paying a speculative amount of fees in the Ethereum network, you pay basically a set fee of 100th or a 10th of a cent, or maybe a cent. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's extremely low. So this opens up the door for us doing some really interesting things, like as Jess and Mariano are completely aware of, that onboarding emerging markets is very difficult, especially if you need to explain that this $10 remittance that is coming in could possibly cost $1, or maybe it'll cost us 2 cents, or maybe it'll cost $3. Who knows? That's a pretty tough sell for emerging markets. So if we can start using a dedicated side chain with predictable and microscopic fees, that really opens up the door to emerging markets. And that's something that we're enormously interested in at MakerDAO. So that's a huge thing for everybody, I think. Less groundbreaking, but also kind of cool, is we now have a SoundCloud version of the the governance calls that happen on Thursdays. So if you are a big fan of scientific risk or governance and risk as much as we are, you can now listen to it on your headphones or while you're driving without.
And just to interject, you guys definitely should be, because even as beginners, I think me and Rich can both attest to the fact that Steven is very articulate and he makes a great point of like really clearly explaining all his points, and even joining in general. Like, I suggest anybody join those because they're incredibly informative.
Yeah, I agree. The more I listen, or the more I'm involved in these conversations with Steven, the more I regret going into IT. I should have gone into finance. This was a huge waste
Happens
of
the
time.
same.
Yeah, money is actually far more interesting than computers. I had no idea until just recently. I think that's it for the interesting technical milestones. One of the major things that I wanted to talk about, the major thing I wanted to talk about in this meeting, and the thing that I teased in Reddit, is that there's a new major initiative at MakerDAO right now. And that initiative is pleasingly called the CCDG, which stands for the Core Community Development Group. And what the Core Community Development Group is it's a set of programs that are designed to create incentives and direct support structures for people that are in our community. So our most standout members of our community, we have our community by its very definition is an unusually intelligent and motivated and highly crypto savvy group of people, and it represents a fantastic pool of talent. It's a huge resource for MakerDAO. It's one of our major resources, and we haven't always done the greatest job leveraging that talent pool and supporting it and growing it the way that we should. And I think that we're at a stage in MakerDAO's development where we need to kind of formalize some of those things. And so what that means is we are launching a series of initiatives that are designed, like I said earlier, to directly incentivize our most highly motivated members through primarily through a series of grant giving exercises. The first iteration of that process doesn't have a name yet. I've been calling it the bootstrapper internally, and I'm not sure whether that's going to catch on, but that kind of tells you what it's all about. We're very interested in continuing the relationship with the developers and the writers and the risk assessors, the professionals that we meet in the community. And what we've done previously is generally been restricted to hackathons, and hackathons are great to get code into a repo. They're very bad at getting code committed a second time to that same repo. And what we want to do is sort of develop these longer term relationships. And the first iteration of this bootstrapping process will be based around small to mid-sized grants that we will be allocating to teams that have built on the ecosystem and or want to build on the ecosystem. And those grants will be dispersed through a milestone-based approach. So we'll sit down with these teams, discuss what their plans are for the future, what their goals are, how excited they are about building on the platform, and the complexity of the project that they're doing. We'll divide it up into specific milestones or feature sets. And as those teams accomplish those goals, we will release further amounts of funding to them until we reach the end of the process. At the end of the process, this opens up the door to us doing some value adds for our grantees as well, like offering consulting services from experts in the organization. Perhaps legal can come in for a few conversations, or public relations can come in for some suggestions about how to get the word out, or we can bring in developers to do light auditing or code reviews. There's a lot of opportunities for MakerDAO to really support people once they actually hit mainnet, and continue that conversation on perhaps to further rounds of funding once things sort of take off. So I am very excited about the possibilities here, and I think that we're going to be in a position to use this sort of block of funds that we have set aside to really incentivize the ecosystem and to create a significant amount of use cases for Dai, because ultimately the MakerDAO Foundation, everybody here is here in order to convince people that Dai is something that they should be transacting with. Everything else sort of falls down or leads up to that and leads back from that. So the more use cases we create, the better it is for everybody. And I think this is going to be a really amazing way to sort of get that happening in emerging markets and all over the world in general. So that is the primary lead on why this new program is so cool. Does anybody have any questions about how that granting process will work or the implications of it? Because I have a doc that's 5 pages long, full of details. So if somebody has questions, I'm probably prepared to answer them. Otherwise, I will get into some of the other kind of cool initiatives that we have going on here.
Rich, maybe you can go into who should apply to this and like what kind of projects you're looking for.
Sure. Yeah, that's a very good idea. So we're going to be releasing, we have a grand vision for the fund and we'll be releasing or sharing details of what that grand vision is over the course of the next few months. But initially what we're looking for are small teams that are either have a product in place or they want to get a product to market and are looking for something in the 5,000 to 20,000 Dai range, where that would be enough to get them to market. And this is the sort of scope that we're hoping for right now. We're primarily focused on projects that are advancing the initiatives that I think that most, well, I shouldn't say that the initiatives that the MakerDAO is interested in. So we're interested in disintermediation. We're interested in emerging economies. We're interested in projects, obviously, that are based around transacting a stable coin. When we're interested in, well, I think that kind of wraps it up, I think, unless, Greg, you were thinking of something that I'm completely blocking on. But we're looking for projects that sort of align with MakerDAO's core principles, and obviously projects that are specific, that specifically use Dai in part of its overarching goals.
Are educational initiatives in the scope of this core community development program?
Yeah, that's actually a great segue, because I can skip to the next section, which is called community education and onboarding. So there we go. So one of the challenges that we have with the MakerDAO ecosystem is that it's complex, or it's sophisticated. I shouldn't say complex, because I try to tell people that it's not complex. Once you finally understand it, everything becomes clear. But that road towards understanding it can be quite challenging. And we don't do a great job of providing people a clear path to understanding how the system works. A lot of the people in our community are sort of represent the people that have run the crucible and refused to give up and finally reached the finish line. And that's a great crowd to have, but we can do better about easing that onboarding process. So we'll be doing things like primarily crowdsourcing, I think, is going to be a big component of this. So finding members of our community that are interested in helping with the onboarding process, helping with writing articles or tutorials or how-tos, and getting them to submit little tiny proposals, explaining what they want to do and how much that's going to cost, and then directly incentivizing them to create that content. I'm also talking to a group of people right now who are helping out with creating an onboarding deck for us. So it's sort of like a course on how to do MakerDAO, what that means. So MakerDAO 101 kind of deal, where it's the first iteration of this deck is what are CDPs? How do I make a CDP? What do I do with the CDP? What are the risks associated with the CDP? So very basic stuff. The same with Dai. Where do I find Dai? How do I store Dai? How do I trade Dai? What do I do with Dai? And then once we have this sort of base layer course finished, the next step will be the more advanced, like the 201 level, where we get into what's my risk profile, or how do I find arbitrage opportunities. Things like that will be the next step. But we really need to get an introductory course where we can just refer people to this constantly updated and consistent set of articles that explain exactly what's going on, which is going to be one of our major initiatives getting started. Another major component of this new group is we'll be creating some uniformity around the way that our hackathons work. So we'll be trying to create more of a plan, more of a track with how these challenges evolve over time, and making sure that they're tailored to the specific event a bit better than we have in the past. And also ensuring that the hackathons are a sort of another on-ramp into the granting program, because like I said earlier, we're very interested in creating long-term relationships with some of the ridiculously talented developers we run into at these hackathons, and identifying that talent as prize winners are sort of euphoric with us and the system in general, and setting up meetings then is probably a great idea, and I want to focus on that for a while as well. Another major component of this initiative is going to be built around promoting good governance, and that hasn't been a huge issue for MakerDAO so far, but it will be soon. Once the proposals start filtering in, once we begin having sort of an official debate process, and once more votes start happening on a regular basis, there will be an opportunity for us to deal with some of the challenges that go along with that, like figuring out the best way to communicate new initiatives, the best way to communicate upcoming votes, the best way to form the conversations around these different proposals. The group will be in charge of doing that. And one of the other, I guess the next, I'm not going to monopolize the entire meeting, but so I'm going to keep this sort of high level. But one of the things that I find most compelling about this is the concept of community advocacy. And in other organizations I've been with, this has been an increasingly important aspect of community management. And what community advocacy means to me is it's an opportunity for us to create sort of a clear path where our community members can communicate in a semi-official manner with the foundation itself. So we've had these situations in the past where our community members have come up with some very compelling reasons why they think that we should add this feature or re-examine this part of our incentive structure, or do something maybe even completely different. And the only mechanisms the community has to speak with us right now are in chat, or in these calls, or in Reddit. And the problem with those three mechanisms is that they're very temporal. So people can have their say, we can have a discussion, but that discussion is not recorded anywhere, and there's no mechanism to follow up on those ideas. And so as part of the community advocacy group, I'm going to set up or begin to talk about setting up, I guess, and I'll get to that in a second, an ambassador program, or community representative program. And one of the responsibilities of the community representatives will be to help organize those initiatives that the community seems to be interested in, and to document those and to get them into a little proposal. And what we'll do is, once the proposal is finished, bring that document, or the community members that came up with the document, and invite them to a meeting to discuss or present those issues back to the relevant stakeholders inside MakerDAO, so we can see whether there's some traction there, and formally sort of evaluate the feasibility of those ideas, which I think sounds a bit dry, but I think that that's one of the most interesting things that this group will be up to, is this. Yeah, I thought Jordan might like that, because Jordan has some interesting ideas he's published in Reddit that haven't got as much traction as they probably should have. So one of the other responsibilities for the community representatives, and this is also pretty cool, I think, is we have a lot of members that are in a lot of really interesting places in the world, and they do a lot of interesting things. And there's an opportunity for these representatives to represent us at events or meetups or conferences that we wouldn't otherwise have arrived at ourselves. So one of the things that we have to prioritize the conferences that we focus on, and which is great for all kinds of reasons, but we frequently find ourselves in enormous buildings full of people that have already drunk the same Kool-Aid that we have, and we need an opportunity to find or to show up at conferences that we might not otherwise have been to. And what I want to do is work with the community representatives to identify these lesser known conferences, or these conferences that are below our radar, and come up with plans to have them attend for us and to represent MakerDAO there, or present a talk about Dai, or a breakout session. And we'll treat those as a very, very small grant, and we'll cover costs and honorariums for people that are interested in representing us on the ground. All right, I think that's probably as much rambling as I'm going to do, because that's a lot to ingest. And so there's some very cool things here. I think that this granting process has the opportunity to really accelerate the size and scope of our third-party ecosystem. The community advocacy process, I believe, will go a long way to sort of formalizing and empowering some of our most dedicated community members to actually go out and do things that are cool and sort of earn a living wage doing that, and the generation of content so we can help onboard our users a bit better than we have been is also super interesting to me. So I think that's where I'm going to wrap it up. If anybody has any questions, let me know. If you have any questions that come up through the course of the rest of the meeting, feel free to type them in, and I will do my best to answer them. And there's the awkward silence. All right, we'll move on then. Lenka, did you want to talk a bit about things that are happening in Prague?
Yep. First of all, I'm really happy about these initiatives, because I think we're missing some sort of very one-on-one articles about Maker, and it's really cool that we can actually use all this amazing power that comes from the community. So I'm really, really happy about this.
Yeah, me too. I think that we're frequently surprised that our community members have as good and sometimes greater understanding of the system than we do occasionally. So I'm really excited.
Yes. So sorry if I look so confused. We have so many things going on. I'm leaving this Thursday morning for Prague, and we'll be there until end of next week. Jessica will be joining very soon afterwards, and we have a bunch of events planned where we participate. So the entire Prague Blockchain Week is really packed with exciting things that are happening. I think we will start off with a status hackathon that will start on the 26th. It will go throughout it will happen throughout the weekend until the 28th. And at Status Hackathon, we'll be having a stand, but most importantly, we'll have some amazing workshops and hacks, challenges assigned, and I'll just go very high level. And end of the Status Hackathon, we'll be organizing a special edition Dai Happy Hour. It will be in a party theme on a party ship, so I'm really excited. We even introduce a special edition of Dai tokens. These are handmade and laser cut locally in Copenhagen. So yes, a lot of exciting things. Afterwards, on the 29th, there is a DeFi summit that Rich was introducing very well. We are new members and we are excited. Yes, you'll get one, David. We are very excited about being part of that. Again, we have some nice representation there. On the 30th, DEF CON already starts. Until the 2nd, we'll have our CTO Andy speaking, and we'll have a formal verification team giving a workshop. We'll have our stand there, of course, and during DEF CON, there are a couple of other events. There is a Blockchain for Good workshop on the 31st, where we'll have our CEO Rune speaking, and a couple more, I think. And then there's some amazing parties in the evenings, and there's just a bunch of other events that I most likely forgot, but it's going to be exciting. Oh, and we have a special DEF CON edition t-shirt, so make sure to stop by and get yours. No spoilers.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Lenka. Yeah, I'm gonna say it again. That was an amazing amount of work getting all that stuff organized. So congratulations. You would not believe the Google Docs that had to get assembled in order to pull this thing off. So. I think that probably, Mariano, did you have any non-hackathon things that you wanted to talk about, or do you want to move into the hackathon?
No, I can speak a bit of the blockchain summit event. Okay, it was a really cool event. Okay, it was the second edition. The first one was in Santiago de Chile. It was a very small one, the first. In this edition at Bogota, Colombia, it was much bigger. There were a lot of exciting projects, and it was just not only Ethereum. We have people from NEM, Neo Blockchain, RSK, Microsoft, IBM. It was a really cool thing. And much of the discussion was related to how blockchain technologies can help the people of the continent, right? Although much of the tools that we are built right now in blockchain are some form of speculative or maybe financial things. In the continent, there's a possibility to really help people with this technology, mostly because the feature of censorship resistance, right? And well, it is obvious that Venezuela is one of the most talked cases in the event, and this was really cool because I see a lot of things that I wasn't aware. For example, I was talking with a guy that shared with me a project that is called EatBCH. It's like a Twitter handling that people send Bitcoin Cash to an address that they have in the profile, and they buy food, and then share the pictures of the kids eating the food with that with the amount of money that was sent to that Bitcoin Cash address. So it was really cool because despite the crypto that you are using, right, Bitcoin, Dai, Ethereum, I don't know, whatever, it is really cool when you see that it is helping people, right? I don't care the name. I do care helping people, and that's the awesome thing. What else? Well, as you said, we had that hackathon. It was really good to see a lot of talented developers, and it was really nice to see a well-known face for us, the VR3 team, that they were the winners of the UNICEF hackathon that took place in Mexico with the Linda project, and they were competing there for the MakerDAO challenge. And that is why that we have Irving Cabello here with us, so he can explain a bit the project called how it was called, Irving, Dai Feeless Transactions, something like that, right?
Hey Mariano, yeah, it's called Feeless Dai. The objective of this project is to send Dai between wallets without the need of gas. So I can showcase you a little bit more if it's possible. Sure. Okay. Let me set up. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay,
yes.
Cool. So this project was intended to increase the adoption of Dai and send Dai between wallets without the need of gas. So I'm going to show you a bit how this works. First of all, you need to have a MetaMask or Trust Wallet in your browser with Dai tokens. Just here is some Dais, and just to show this is in zero balance. then I'm going to send to this address. And what this does is you ask for you send a transaction, and you're asking a wallet to refund you the gas. So this is like frictionless for the end user. And as you can see, once you request this transaction, this is all shown on Etherscan. This is a little slow, but once it gets confirmed, you can send your transaction. Let me show you. So here it is. So at first I didn't have the account, the balance. Now I have new balance, and I can send the Dai transaction. All of this is recorded on the Etherscan platform. And once it gets confirmed, you get the balance and your receipt. And that's it. It's a really simple process.
Well, that looks really cool. Can you walk us through exactly what the mechanisms are that are happening in the back of this? So you're requesting. So somebody tries to make a transaction, they don't have any gas, they make a request, and then is it a delegate or contract externally approves that?
Yeah, sure. First of all, we have a sender and a receiver. The Feeless platform is composed by a web app that is what you saw. Mm-hmm. And inside this web application, we have a Ethereum virtual wallet living on that manage the transactions. This virtual wallet needs to have the Ethereum to subsidize the transactions. Once you request in the platform for this transaction, the Feeless Dai checks if you have any Dai balance, if you already had any successful transactions, and you don't have any pending Dai transactions to prevent attacking this address. And if you are approved by the platform, you get the balance, so you can now send it to the new wallet. And that's a bit how it works. So we use the Etherscan API to get the current gas info to be a bit more effective. And yeah, that's it.
So I have a question. So the first transaction, when you request the reimbursement for what would be the gas for the second transaction, how does that work?
Yeah, the first one, right? Okay, the first one is just you request to a web application. It's all centralized at this moment. So yeah, in the application, they just checked if you have Dai balance. For example, if you try to get this gas for an account without Dai, they won't be approved. So also, if you try to get more gas when you had a pending pending request, it won't be approved also. They only be approved if you have a positive balance and you have a good record of using this gas. If you have this, the subsidiary account, this one, will send you back the gas, so you can now send to the receiver.
So are you doing some light reputation management then? You're trying to figure out whether somebody's done something too many times or whether they're requesting too much gas or...
Yeah, sure. First of all, the first year of validation is if you have that and you have spending correctly, like attacking the subsidiary account won't be cost effective because they need to move dice between different wallets. So the attack will cost more than the gas spent by the subsidiary wallet. And yeah, that's just our simple verification process. Like we can add more like tracking past records. I don't know, but the basic verification is that.
That's cool. So, and presumably if somebody has Ethereum in their wallet, they won't be able to get the gas paper.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Nick, do you have any deep developer insight you wanted to bring to the
Sorry.
Not particularly.
All right, I just wanted to ping the developer we have in the chat to see if he saw anything.
Oh, nice.
It was closely followed by Mariano Conti too.
Oh yeah, Mariano. I forgot. Mariano, do you have any? Mariano number 1. Do you have any comments or opinions?
No, I like this approach. There's a lot of stuff that has to be done inside the web app, probably to prevent spamming, because otherwise, if you want to do this all via smart contracts and actually delegate another smart contract to move your tokens for you, then you at least need to do one transaction in the blockchain for approving your DAI balance on another contract. So in this case, it's like an unconventional approach, but it does work without any gas and any transactions on the actual sender. So I mean, I thought it was for, how much was it? 17 hours? Less than 17 hours. It was like a really good proof of concept.
Yeah, it's a cool way of approaching it. Just generally, people go with a trusted signer and then a delegator. But I like this model too. It seems like there's use cases that we haven't quite comprehended yet. It's also interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Irving.
Yeah. Just for your information, that we made some estimations to subsidize all the DAI transaction on the contract, the current contract on mainnet, will cost like 2 Ethereum just for all the transaction you already made.
I think when me and Rich had a meeting with Lev a couple weeks ago, Lev actually blew my mind with the idea that the DSR can be used by dApps and other people that have like pools of DAI to actually offset user transaction fees.
Yeah, it's an interesting option here. You'd have to, if whoever's running the virtual wallet had a bankroll, they could potentially over time just use the DSR to cover transactions. Potentially, who knows? Well, Irving, in this model, what's the incentive for the virtual wallet owner to do what they're doing?
Yeah, like the only incentive is, for example, if we're talking with you, DAI, is to incentivize the transactions on the network. Like there's no like reward for funding the virtual wallets. Mm-hmm. So that's just the only incentive to increase the adoption.
I guess that is something that I need to finish the read of the Radical Market blog post. But I guess that it has something in common with this so-called commons thing, in which a total market can benefit of this kind of pool of resources. And I guess this virtual wallet may fulfill that role in this radical market thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because currently, because gas fees are so variable and frequently so high, it's it's a problem that needs to be addressed for onboarding purposes. But once we see some layer 2 options arrive, or something like XDAI arrive, solutions like this will be less about removing roadblocks, and solutions like this will be more about removing frictions, like minor frictions. So I think we'll probably see a point in the future where most organizations, sort of like what David was referring to, that will just seek to abstract the whole concept of transaction fees away from people because it's just annoying and confusing, as opposed to a barrier to entry. This is an interesting concept. Irving, did you have some plans for the future, or is this just sort of a proof of concept for the tool?
Yeah, sure. Like this was just a proof of concept. Like honestly, this was a hackathon for the 17 hours. Well, the quality. Well, obviously, it can be get more work in the inside code. But yeah, probably we can improve it.
Irving, it would be really cool if you could mix somehow your Linda project or UNICEF and this one, and to start building something for the refugees, or maybe all the challenges that we saw at the UNICEF hackathon.
Yeah, sure. It can be really great to see how we can like mix both of these projects. Sure.
That's interesting. Cool. Thanks for that, Irving. Mariano, I want to ask you, both Marianos, I think, because you mentioned the UNICEF hackathon, and one of the interesting things we saw at the UNICEF hackathon was there was this extreme level of interest in identity-related solutions on the blockchain as opposed to currency-related solutions. Did you guys? What were the general themes you saw at the Columbia hackathon? Was it about transactions, or were there any other sort of initiatives that were people found compelling there?
Marian, can you go?
Yeah. So, I think I was the one that participated in both. So essentially, in this one, it was much more business oriented. Yeah. The other one, because it was UNICEF, and the topic was refugees, almost everybody chose identity because it was more of a pressing issue. And also we had the problem of tackle blockchain onto everything syndrome, maybe, that while the efforts are laudable, in the end, we don't know if it's going to make much sense, right? Because we had a couple of things that were, oh yeah, this is a wallet for refugees, right? And we don't even know the conditions that they're in, and asking people to have like a phone. That's why the Linda project was interesting, because it tackled like using SMS messages and simple phone calls instead of having like a smartphone. But in this case, in Colombia, everything was a little bit more business oriented, but still within the means and the constraints of like Latin American economy, which is a lot more messy than what you see in other places.
I think that we're going to be learning a lot of things, I think, from these more regional hackathons than we would in the Southern California hackathons, because I think that there's this blind spot that crypto has right now, where we think that building a complex solution for $1,000 feature phone is the future of crypto, and I'm more and more becoming convinced that that's absolutely not the future of crypto. The future of crypto is probably happening right now in West Africa or in South America, where we need solutions that are as easy or easier than Venmo and require that same level of technical complexity. Like, we should be able to just send crypto to somebody's phone number and just walk away from the table. But the UX issues that we have right now are tremendous.
No, that's true. But I mean, if you put them side by side, then yeah, some issues are more pressing than others. But that doesn't mean that first world problems as such are not problems, because they are as well. It's I don't want to be the one that says, hey, let's not do this just because it may not have such an impact in the world as something else. I think a problem is a problem. And
no, I see what you mean. And I think that I agree completely. Like, it doesn't mean that we need to shift our focus. What I'm trying to say is that there's lessons to be learned, because we've seen frequently where, like, I know 3G or wireless technology is a good example where the things we consider less developed economies have completely leapfrogged the first world economies by the adoption of 3G and cell phone usage and digital or phone-based economies, where we're sort of, the paradigms I think that we use sometimes are overly complicated, where we can probably learn a few things about optimization of UX. So that's really interesting to me to see what people are building at in these other conferences. So it's cool.
Yeah, the other project that I wasn't able to get the guys here today, it was another project really cool. It was called a coffee bean tracker for futures, and they were mixing IoT things with DAI and future contracts and tokenize of coffee crops, in which they will be following a coffee crop with IoT things, and if the crop happens to follow like a certain thresholds of, let's say, I don't know, pH, humidity, and all the important things for a coffee bean, they can tokenize that crop and start selling futures, right? And as the coffee bean crop follows that certain threshold, that tokenized crop is getting pricier real time, right? And they can sell those portions of the crop as a future contracts, and that is a really cool project.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. I'm concerned about the level of technical complexity or logistical complexity involved with that. Are they partnering with some kind of major organization, or is this largely theoretical?
No, it was a team that they told us that they were doing on their free time this thing, and they needed a stable coin to price the coffee bean crops. And well, as Mariano said, 17 hours is not long enough to develop something like that. But they were working towards this implementation of DAI in their platform. It was really cool. I was talking with them yesterday. They told me that they are in a hurry right now because they have like other works and other jobs. But as soon they are able, they will upload the project to the open bounty Gitcoin that we have. And yes, and hopefully we will have them next week here talking about the project.
All right, looking forward to it. Okay, we're coming up on 10 minutes left. If anybody has any random questions they want to throw out to the community or to us, please do so now, or give it some thought and then type it into the window, or just jump into the conversation. Mariano, Conti, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about? Any other standout events or thoughts from the Columbia Hackathon?
No, I mean, I had a really great time. This was my first event that was not Ethereum specific. Mm-hmm. So even though I did not know a lot about the other blockchains, I learned a little bit, and it was nice. Even though it's still an echo chamber, like a blockchain echo chamber, it was not an Ethereum echo chamber. So we got to see how other people are tackling problems. Mm-hmm. And I think that was also quite eye-opening. And it's probably going to be a different deal next week at DevCon, right? Because, but even then, we're going to see different projects. And I think we need to expand our minds a little bit, because we can learn from every single project. And yeah, I gave a nice talk about Maker and participated in a panel. So well, I think it was a real success.
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I think that I agree that we we have to, like I said earlier, we have to prioritize the conferences we go to, and frequently or unintentionally, I guess, those conferences are massive Ethereum cheerleading events.
Are we Ethereum maximalists?
Well, it depends. That's a tough question because I don't know what we is in this organization. So everybody has their own opinion, right? So if you're talking about me, no, I think that Ethereum is just the thing that works right now, and if something better comes along, then we should jump ship. But
cool.
I don't think that's the way that this ecosystem moves. We're going to see the Ethereum killer coming a mile away, and it'll take a year to get here, and we'll have plenty of opportunities to start spreading our wings to other chains. So I'm not that concerned about.
Cool. You had my burning question.
Oh yeah, what is your burning question? This is it?
No, it's about maximalist. I've been reading a lot about this maximalist thing this week, and well, I'm on your side. I mean, I guess that the answer that you gave is the same thing that I'm thinking about this.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird conversation because predicting the future is almost impossible. Predicting the future of technology is even harder than impossible, and then predicting the future of crypto technology is just an absurd proposition. So, I think that in the short term, there's a lot of really interesting things happening with sidechains and bridges. So, Loom, Chain, Cosmos, or Polkadot. The list goes on and on. I think there were a lot of the space can shake out in a lot of different ways. Either there's just one clear winner and we all just join or not at our peril, or we have this abstraction of various technologies hidden from the end users and we just migrate from one to the other. And it doesn't really matter who wins. It's just whoever's most useful for this purpose at this time. So it's hard to tell.
Or maybe we will have some verticals. Some blockchains will be better fit for certain industries.
I think that there isn't a lot of pressure on us because I don't know. There's probably people in this conversation that have better insight than I do. So if you do, please chime in. But I think it's important that we get Dai onto every chain we possibly can, or somebody on that chain introduces Dai to their chain. It's going to be a question of expenditure of effort, but if it's very easy to move Dai, it's going to be very, very difficult to move the entire ecosystem that makes Maker work. So if it turns out that in a year or two down the road, that all the blue chip organizations in crypto are on Ethereum, but some of the interesting things are happening somewhere else, it won't really matter that much. We just need a chain that we can write to that has smart contracts for our collateral.
True.
I don't know. It's a weird.
That's true. I'm totally with you, Rich.
Right, so
I will add something else. I don't know if Nadia may say this about integrations. Nadia, are we allowed to say new partnerships?
No, not yet. Well, no, you can talk about it. Okay, okay. So. You can talk about it, the ones we already signed the agreement. If you want to.
We'll just consider that an announcement of an announcement and leave it at that.
Where's Justin Sun at?
Maybe we can talk about that in our next community call, so stay tuned.
Sounds good. We have 5 minutes left, and Jordan, as always, has an interesting and semi-tough question, which we should probably address. And I like this question, actually, because I just said a few minutes ago that there kind of is no we at Maker, so I'm not the voice of what everybody thinks at Maker. I only have my own opinions, and if anybody else has opinions, they're more than happy to jump in. But with the Tether foolishness that's happened yet again, like on the 6-month schedule, whatever they're working on for destroying the industry, there's been a lot of interest in stable coins, and actually stable coins that have some kind of audit trail associated with them. And there's been a lot of media in the last couple weeks that strangely have taken the position that there's only one type of stablecoin, and that's the IOU token reserve-backed model, because of this explosion of I think a lot of organizations have realized that it's not all that hard to just open up a bank account and start issuing certificates for dollars. And I think the question in the chat was, are we concerned? Chris Tarpley asked the question. And I don't know whether Maker is concerned or not. I don't think that I am concerned, though, because I think that there's a larger perspective to be taken here. One is that the wider crypto journalistic scene has a depressingly low understanding of how crypto works generally, especially in the stablecoin space. And a lot of the conversations that we've seen recently have been, like I said, discussing USD tokens. And USD tokens, from my perspective, represent a very niche market in the stablecoin world. They represent up until this point, whatever, make up a number, 90% of all USD stablecoin activity, in my opinion, is just changing pointers in a relational database in a centralized exchange somewhere. This stuff doesn't hit consumers. It doesn't hit a chain generally, and the number of people that are actually redeeming this stuff for money is vanishingly small. So there's basically Tether, and then there's the new sort of exchange-based tokens, USD tokens that are coming out. But even with the new crop that's arising, if you look at the number of holders, the number of trades, and the volume that's outstanding, there's only one, I think, that's doing more activity than Dai. So sorry, I'm getting a bit off track here, but as far as I'm concerned, we have to stay on top of what the market's up to. We have to look at this trend. We have to start asking, and we have been asking questions of these journalists, like, hey, you had a stablecoin article, and you've treated stablecoins as PAX, USD, TUSD, and Tether, and that's not what a stablecoin is. And we also have to remember that the total addressable market for these things, I think, are extremely small. If you're a company in Denmark or Saigon or whatever, it's going to be a fairly hard sell to place all of your assets into a stable coin that's beholden to the whims of the New York State Attorney or Attorney General. I'm not American. I don't even know what it's called. I'm assuming there's somebody in New York who's in charge of all this stuff. So taking your real money, turning it into a token, and then having that money go into a bank account that's not under your control or in a jurisdiction that you have any say in, and is beholden to or encumbered by the laws of a foreign country, I think is probably not a great sell for most people. So the Dai is, as far as I'm concerned, it's a global currency, and these new coins that are coming up on the market are convenience tokens for Americans that have a specific stablecoin use case. So Jordan and Chris, I don't know if I've addressed any concerns adequately. So we see what's happening, and we're aware of it, but I don't know if you could say that we are concerned, and I'm not convinced that we should be, capital C concerned, but we're obviously taking everything into account.
I tend to think of the stablecoin environment much like an automotive industry in which we have a lot of different types of cars. You have vans, you have cars, you have bikes, you have trucks, you have pickups, you have a lot of different things that fulfill different purposes, right? I tend to think like that.
Yeah, and this sort of nicely ties back into your maximalism thing, because there's a tendency in this space, or human nature in general, to determine, to gauge things against whether they're the winner or not. And I think that's a mistake to assume that there's going to be a winner stablecoin. I think that
binary state.
Yeah, there's a use case for piles. There's piles of use cases, and there's enough room for a few people at the top. And as long as we're there, I'm kind of happy. But like I said, I don't speak for Maker, so that was my own personal. Unfortunately, we're a minute over, and I'm already late for another meeting, so I have to stop recording.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys, and thank you, VR3 Team and Irvin.
Yeah, thanks for the demo. That was great. Talk to everybody later.
Awesome.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.